I'm speaking with Scott Watson, the former curator of the Canadian Pavilion. So, Scott, maybe you could introduce yourself and tell more about your occupation, about your curatorial practice, about your general approach to arts.
Well, you want me to talk for an hour and a half? No, I was curator of this pavilion, the Canada Pavilion, in 2005, when we showed Rebecca Belmore. It was the first time Canada had shown an Indigenous woman artist to represent Canada. So I was quite happy with that project. Most of my career I've been a university art museum person, which I like. I like the freedom and the discursive atmosphere of the university for art. Right now I'm writing more. I stepped down as director and I'm now writing and spending a lot of time in Berlin.
Oh, that's so. How do you see the art scene in Berlin?
Well, a lot of artists live in Berlin. I mean, I think it's a city where artists live. There's a lot of exhibitions to be seen. Berlin's a city I like. It doesn't have the kind of big shows that you see in London or Paris or New York, but there's a lot to see in Berlin. There's a lot going on in Berlin.
I would like to ask you about your general perception about this year's Biennale, and maybe what does it mean to you personally to participate in this kind of big art event?
Well, I haven't seen too much. I came because my friend Stan Douglas is representing Canada. So this morning I went to see his piece, which is not in the Giardini, and we got lost getting there. So I've only seen 2 or 3 things here. I've read about the Biennale, of course, so I understand the concepts somewhat, and that the large show will be 90% women, which I think is a really interesting and terrific thing to do, actually. And what I think about Biennales, I don't know. It's like it's in some way it's too big to absorb. I feel that people who have done something that might take 2 or 3 hours to deal with might have done the wrong thing for an occasion like this, when people don't have that much attention for things. But what can I say? I find the Biennale very stimulating. Critically, I wonder about the viability and the effectiveness of huge mega shows like this. I mean, especially on these opening days, everybody here is in the art world. So it's the art world speaking to the art world. You don't get a sense that this is in dialogue with anybody, really, except us. But we're people too. But I think art, has aspirations to have a different kind of interaction with society and with people. And I'm not sure that something like, not just this Biennale, but any Biennale delivers that. And whether smaller, more everyday, more low-key interventions, and more of them might be what I would design.
Thank you very much. We also, within our discussions, short interviews are asking about the topic of surrealism. How is it relevant towards the reality that calls us to take actions to do changes?
That's a really good question. I wish I'd known about it 5 hours ago and I could come up with an intelligent answer, because I have noticed, as you've noticed, that surrealism is back in the conversation, certainly in this show. And then there was another show about global surrealism, or an article or a book or an exhibition somewhere, showing that surrealisms that lasted through the 30s and 40s and 50s in places even like Vancouver, Canada, constitute a kind of global phenomenon that's never really been given its due. And surrealism is traditionally associated with revolt and revolution of all kinds. The classic Breton surrealism is, I guess it's fairly misogynist and fairly homophobic, actually. But the fundamental ideas of surrealism are stronger than André Breton's individual prejudices. And so, of course, I think it's liberating to be able to use unreason to think.
We are also bringing back the two kind of big ideas that
Yeah.
are talked about in Ukrainian pavilion, the
Yeah.
idea of exhaustion, and
Yes.
in the Polish pavilion, the idea of re-enchantment, and
Yeah.
we try to compare these two
Yeah.
perspectives, one
Yeah.
which is more optimistic,
Yeah.
and the other one which is pessimistic,
Yeah.
and how they are applied in arts. And
Yeah.
what is your position on that?
Well, I think we need both. I mean, I've been in North America where there's a resurgence of First Nations artists. And along with that resurgence comes conversation and talk about how to properly relate to the land and to the things that grow on it and the other creatures that live there, and what kind of respect and interaction is demanded if the planet's going to survive. So I consider re-enchantment part of that process. And, we can't have a politics if we're not realists. And realistically, when you look around, it's very sobering at what's going on in the world politically. What will happen if Donald Trump becomes president of the United States again? I mean, you think it's frightening now. It's just like thinking about the future is even more so. And so, if you can't face that, you'll never figure out how to act. So I guess we need both. We need both the promise and practice of re-enchantment and a really sober pessimism.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having this conversation with us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to meet you.
And have a nice time
Thanks.
here.